respected chair and my fellow speakers. I'll be discussing my paper, Environmental Security, Prospecting a New Model for India and its Indian Ocean Neighbors. I would begin with, my paper begins with India's relations, traditional, historic, and economic relations with Indian Ocean region, particularly, especially the Indian Ocean itself. As we all know, the geographical proximity, India is heavily dependent towards Indian Ocean in terms of its climate, economy, agriculture, life itself. And we can see from modern and from ancient times itself, the spice trade that has been happening through the Arabian Sea and Indian Ocean has been vital into the ancient economy. And when we come to the modern trade realm, we can see a lot of shipping lanes passing through the Indian Ocean is crucial, not just for India, but to the entire world. And it was in the root of Western imperialism towards the Indian subcontinent, which enslaved us for the last for more than 2 centuries. And now we are facing a grave threat from the ocean itself, other than Western imperialism that have already consumed us. It is climate change and the environmental issues. We are blessed by the Indian Ocean for our weather patterns and climate, and now we are facing same problems based on weather and climate change from the Indian Ocean itself. And I'll be moving on to the relations between climate change and Indian Ocean. And several countries, including India, several countries are being threatened by the climate change, especially in the Indian Ocean region, with a particular emphasis on small island countries like Maldives, Mauritius, Seychelles, are threatened by the sea level rise that is happening adjacent to the climate change. And India too is facing problems from the sea level rise. India is likely to lose approximately 13,973 square kilometers. And it is only on a best case scenario. On a worst case scenario, it is likely to rise towards some sort of 60,000 square kilometers. And that's entirely far more greater than any territorial losses that we have had since our independence. And rise in ocean temperature is also a serious problem, especially impacting heavily on marine life, which would affect significantly on our economic realm, which is already on a terrible phase. Change in climate and weather patterns, that is something other that will disrupt the flora and fauna, patterns of human life, economy, etc. And I'll be rushing towards to the next issue, like other environmental issues in the IOR region. We can classify it into short-term and spontaneous, and to long-term and slow-paced. When we discuss about short-term and spontaneous ones, we can refer to the frequently occurring tropical cyclones, floods, unprecedented rains, etc. For instance, I can take an example of my state itself. We have been facing unprecedented amount of rainfall over a shorter period of time, which would cause immense floods that is seriously ailing the state for the last 2-3 years. And we can classify the other sort of environmental issues as long-term and slow-paced. We will not be knowing or it will not be evidently on a larger scale, like sea level rise. We are not feeling it, the sea level rise. It's there, but we are not feeling its impact on an immediate scale. But on a longer term, we will be feeling it. We will be losing cities, we will be losing agricultural lands. Kerala alone will lose some sort of 50,000 hectares of paddy cultivation, which is happening in the Kutanad region. And that will be a serious blow to the food security of the state and to the country. It will be happening along both the seaboards of our country. And other problems of saline intrusion, which will harshly affect the agricultural production of the country, and land loss, that is what simply happens in sea level rise. Coastal erosion, coastal erosion is something which is more evident than it is not related to the climate change, but it is related to the oceanic activity that is happening. But there are no studies that are happening in our country. The only study that had conducted ever since independence was in the 2006, after the 2004 tsunami, jointly conducted by ISRO and Central Ocean Commission, which found out we lost some sort of 93 square kilometers in net loss. There is this coastal erosion is happening, as well as more land is being created due to oceanic activity. But in fact, we are losing land and mark a net loss in terms of coastal erosion. And disruption in weather patterns, that is something that we have to focus on. We are losing our water level on a considerable scale, especially in the cities. It is because of the fall in rainfall, on an even distribution of rainfall. It is sometimes an even distribution of rainfall is something that we need for the substantiate sustainability of our water levels. And there are other issues too, that we are losing land. I can tell an example, like the loss of Parali 1 in the Bangaram atoll of Lakshadweep Islands. We are one atoll short in Lakshadweep Islands for the more than 20 years. But the funniest thing is that none of them noticed it until a biology scholar from Calicut University found out there was one atoll is missing. And I'll be moving on to India's role as the core structure of my paper. I'll be focusing on how these challenges can be converted into an opportunity where we can use it in our foreign policy, as well as our relations with our neighbors, especially our immediate neighbors. And I will be focusing on the India's role on an old a philosophy or an ideology or a method for foreign policy, non-reciprocity policy in accordance with the Gujarat Doctrine. It is like we, India, must act as in the provider role in our neighborhood. And in my opinion, we must build and lead a common environmental security structure and strategy for the entire IOR region. We can do it in a method-wise manner, and we must emphasize on functionally specific projects and initiatives under regional and trans-regional infrastructure should be established, and India should assume the lead and provider role in all those projects. I will be proposing three on multi-level scales, three like bilateral as well as regional policies that we can employ in terms to turn these challenges into our opportunities in foreign policy and immediate neighbor relations. The first one would be coastal protection projects. We are losing land, as I have mentioned earlier. So does the others. We are all situated in the same area, so our problems would be similar, which not may possess an immediate problem, but in the long term, yes. And we may face a significantly lower intensity, while our neighbors, especially our island neighbors, will be facing it on not in just a nominal scale, but in an existential one. And I will be focusing on one country, Bangladesh. India, Bangladesh, we have a similar structure in the Bengal region. And common factors in coastal erosion, such as sea level rise and increased flow in Himalayan rivers. The Himalayan rivers, due to the rising temperatures, are significantly showing an increased water levels and increased flow, which would adversely affect the existence of heavily populated delta region. And we can initiate several jointly projects with Bangladesh to enhance our relations with them. We can use several strategies, including building seawall, conservation of mangrove forests, etc. And another country that I will be focusing on will be Maldives. Lakshadweep, situated in the very same correlative group, that of Maldives, is facing similar problems. If we are losing Lakshadweep, the Maldives is also facing, and they are pretty much audible in their statements related to this environmental degradation and climate change. And land reclamation is something that is happening in Maldives, which is not happening in Lakshadweep, and they are doing it with the Chinese companies. Chinese companies, we are pretty much annoyed about the Chinese activity that is happening in the Indian Ocean region. And land reclamation, when the Chinese are investing, they are an external power. We are not. We are a closely related, approximate neighbor, and we can build it in a collective sense. And large land reclamation projects, particularly using our dredgers. China made the world's second largest dredger and gifted as a token to Maldives for, as an aid towards their dredging operations. We have a dredging operation of ourselves, dredging operations of Corporation of India, so we can employ them. And India can start with Parali 1, which we lost in the Bengalam Atoll of Lakshadweep Island chain. And that would be an example how we can do the things without even anybody else's help by employing our own dredging operation. And the next one, I will be focusing on the BIMSTEC regional grouping. A disaster response mechanism can be established, especially instituting a complex system of regional international disaster response mechanism comprising of early warning systems, weather forecasting establishments, and a regional international disaster response force. That is too crucial. And a regional international disaster response force. Yes, of course, establishing an international task force will initially bear an economic burden to our country. But India can employ the personnel of our own national disaster response force if they are not occupied with our issues. And it is a potential avenue for India to create a Pakistan-free South Asian security grid. That would be entirely, we can almost include everyone else other than Afghanistan. We have stable relations, but considering the the weather patterns, which is entirely different from that of the subcontinent, we would not be able to, we wouldn't be worrying about Afghanistan on that scale. And it will be a valuable addition that we can bring a collective sense of collective sense of brotherhood between our neighbors, especially our friendly neighbors, which are tilting towards China. And on to the next as a proposal, I will be focusing on Indian Ocean Rim Initiative on climate change. All of us are facing threats from the Indian Ocean. So we can, IOR, Indian Ocean Rim Association, we are a member, and we have several other countries, several littoral and non-littoral states as the members and observers in this group. So we can lead. We are the most dominant power in the IOR. So it is not a Herculean task to assume the leadership role. And several other regional groupings, such as the SARC, ASEAN, the African Union, BIMSTEC, are all the members of those regional groupings are member states towards these Indian Ocean Rim Association. So it would be a great platform for us to initiate our environmental policies on a global scale. And it would clearly deliver a statement that we are ready on a global scale, especially in terms of environmental crisis response. And the better thing that we must stick to climate change adaptation programs. We must build an image of a global environmental fighting power. And we can formulate decentralized climate change mitigation efforts like early warning mechanisms, disaster response task forces. And when we employ these task response forces, we can lease our own national disaster response forces in terms of personal training and in terms of climate mitigation efforts. So it will be of our advantage that we will be sending men in boots to foreign countries without under the not under the label of an invasive force, but on a helping hand. And we can formulate global. It will be pretty instrumental on formulating the global proposals in mitigating the consequences, fighting and adapting to climate change, which will be of great significance as the region holds almost 40% of the global population. The Indian Ocean region is the most populated area in the entire world. The Indian Ocean rim, it holds the majority of the population, and the impact would be severe, and we can employ and we can mitigate and then employ it to our benefits. And that would be all of my paper. Thank you.